Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI. I'm brought to you by me, Mal McCallion. I'm the CEO of Model Prop and co-host Matt. Hey, Matt.
Hey, I'm Matt Goddard, founder of Goddard Consulting Group.
Brilliant stuff. So we have got a packed podcast for you today. So without further ado, let us get stuck in to our property news. All right, so Matt, this week on Property News, we've got a lot happening in the portal world. So just wanted to start off with Zoopla. All right, so obviously number 2 in our market here in the UK, a big player, been spoken about as a little bit under pressure from the pincer movement of CoStar coming in on one side and Rightmove bossing it on the other. They've had some pretty good coverage this week. They've launched some new videos and stuff like that. So what's your take on Zoopla and where they are?
I'm really intrigued by Zoopla, and just first and foremost, I'm back home in Cleethorpes/Grimsby, and they're on like their new adverts. One of my good friends from college, his wife actually appears in one of those for Northwall over in the West Coast, Liverpool way. I've seen a lot of that on personal social media, seeing how that comes through and sort of the noise that's created, or at least Craig has created around his company and being on those Zoopla ads and appearing on buses stops and that sort of thing. But I'm intrigued by Zoopla more so, as you say, in terms of that pincer movement and how we're going to see what happens with them as a whole, because you've got the CRM side of the business, what we used to know as Property Software Group, and now Zoopla Property, which has recently relaunched as Alto, and a completely separate entity from what I can tell. And then you've got the portal piece, and I'm just waiting for them to be acquired, to be honest.
Yeah, by CoStar.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think we've got the cash to do it, have we?
Listen, I've got some stuff down the back of the sofa, but not that many. But no, look, I agree with you. I think it's, and look, going back to set up portal days, it was set up as a rival to Rightmove. I think it got somewhere, but yeah, I mean, has been such a dominant beast for 25 years. It's been difficult, and I think it's started to almost look like Zoopla's happy being number 2, and that's been comfortable. And then On the Market came along, didn't really get close to it, but now that it's been taken over by CoStar, there's a lot more at stake, I think.
I think one of the things you touched on there from 25 years ago was Zoopla that's maybe not known as current as at the moment is how you went about building that Zoopla brand, and in terms of acquiring those smaller portals, bringing it all together, rebranding them. And okay, On the Market are taking more of a potentially aggressive one by CoStar buying On the Market and Zoopla up for grabs, and then bringing it all under a homes.com banner. And that's what I'm not betting the house on by any means, but that's what I'm certainly saying openly now. But you've been through that process, haven't you? You've seen that work very well for Zoopla and how it grew so quickly.
Yeah, and I remember we quickly grew to a reasonable number 3 in terms of acquiring, as you say, Think Property, Hot Property Finder, whatever else, Property, Glowbricks, all of those kind of guys, and threw them all together, and then left them rotating for a bit in their own brand, and then scooped them underneath the Zoopla banner. But it was only really then but having built that kind of momentum, then we were able to go into the conversation with what at the time was called the Digital Property Group, who had Prime Location and Find a Property, and it was owned by the Daily Mail, and then bring them into play. So they were the second place, and then we just built this really much chunkier second place. Like you, I think that's the kind of natural place for CoStar and Homes and On the Market to go, to try and do this deal with Zoopla, because otherwise they're just spending an absolute fortune throwing rocks at each other instead of throwing rocks at Rightmove, and Rightmove's just sitting back smoking a cigar and loving it.
We know that the only other one that's going to displace Rightmove, if it's not homes.com and social media, but people need to start using that bigger, and that's maybe one for a separate conversation. But I am intrigued by that, and obviously CoStar have already done that trick in America, haven't they, by going through and taking those independent portals and rebrand them all as homes.com.
Yeah, I think so. The Matterport deal went through, I think, a week or 2 ago for CoStar. So they've now got some unique content as well that I think they're 100% looking to bring exclusively into their portals to try and get people to have a different, richer experience on their sites compared to others. So I think that's interesting. They've also, again, in the last couple of weeks, they've gone after Domain, the number 2 in Australia. And I think Nine, who are the main shareholders in Domain, have come back and said, if you give us this extra bit, then we're game. So I think that that they are absolutely intending to make a real kind of impact. And I think, hoovering up Zoopla at some stage makes perfect sense. But I do think it's interesting that Zoopla has made some pretty strong moves recently and don't seem to be quite as I don't know, just exposed in terms of just waiting for something to happen. There actually seem to be now going after some. And I think that's quite interesting. Obviously, in the background to that, we've got Rightmove and its price increases and it being reported to the Competition and Markets Authority by Sean Adams and a petition of some hundreds of people. So yeah, I think that the portal landscape is in an interesting place. And then you've got a few new ones sprouting up as well, as tends to happen every 3 or 4 years.
No, exactly. I remember actually when I joined Repeat, what, 13 years ago now, and there was a story of George Steed, the old one of the founders, actually having a call from someone in one of these new portal upstarts, calling up and saying, "We want a free feed. We understand you're charging for these feeds, these portal feeds." And George saying, "Come back to you when you are something significant." And the guy was Alex Chesterman, and obviously he did go on to do something, but as a CRM and George running it, he'd had so many portals come along the way that these 4 or 5 that we hear about this week, it'd be interesting to see who survives that. And it just as you touched on there, the domain news from CoStar as well was absolutely broke while I was over in Australia with Ray White. The agency, not the guy. He's long since passed. But it was interesting to see the noise that created over there. And Domain are very much the Zoopla of Australia in terms of not only the second player, but also they've invested heavily in technology and owning that technology space historically as well. So it's to see how that plays out. And obviously, CoStar are much more than just an American player, and that's what it regards.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think it is going to be fascinating. It sounds like they might get Domain away, which is going to be interesting. The kind of that there is a reflection back over here where REA Group obviously tried to buy Move back in September and narrowly failed by all accounts. Again, when you look at the likes of Sean Adams, who was saying that essentially Rightmove is fattening itself up to get one more offer before it actually gives itself over and then just yeah, everybody runs to the hills and sees what AI does. One of your points was about whether social media was going to be the only other answer to Move's dominance. I do wonder, and again, we'll get a bit more into the sort of AI stuff as we always do. But yeah, agentic search, I think, has got a really interesting place in that, and whether actually. So I don't know, you got access to Manus as well last week. I've been playing around with it this weekend as well. I finally got access. I can't
I
believe.
did, yeah. Don't
Yeah,
you think is it worth just explaining what Manus is as well? I know people you will mention on your podcast previously.
100%. Yeah. So Manus AI is a Chinese AI actor. So it will essentially, it's task based. So you give it a task
Mm.
and it will go away and it will work out how to do it. It'll write itself. So this is all AI. It'll write itself a little list of things to do and then it will go off and execute them. And that includes going and looking on websites and finding information, bringing it back, synthesizing it, and then presenting a report at the end of it. If you're interested, I actually put a LinkedIn post up this morning on. So if you go find Mal McCallion, actually showing some of it working out and it showing it actually going and not only finding properties that were within my specific criteria, which was sea view down on the south coast and near a ballroom dancing kind of convention, which it went and found very entertainingly. But it also then created a website for this,
Wow, yeah.
which is like absolutely phenomenal. So essentially, what it's doing is it's going and grabbing properties. Just again, just out of information, it wasn't all Rightmove properties. There was on the market properties were in there as well. It looked at agent websites too. So it's really this is what's going to be happening. And then yeah, it brought all back together and created a nice little website for me that I could then go and add to as well if I had any other ballroom dancing type properties to look.
That reminds me of a number of years ago where again out in Australia when I was working there in 2018, every new listing had its own microsite branded as the agency, and these were spun up in real time and created. When I used Manus, I did it for some website type work, but more for a client in Dubai. And it created that new website and had all the content on there, and it was accessible to anybody online. And
Yeah.
so it was almost like your search is not just a match out the CRM anymore; it's a match of everything that's available online, not just the individual users' clients. So if I'm here in Cleethorpes and you've got Pioneer and Chrome, for example, it'd be a match of Pioneer and Chrome listings. But actually, no, it's a match of every listing in that area. That's really interesting to see where that could go.
100% because one of the USPs, probably the main USP of the portals has always been aggregation, right? The
Mm.
fact that you can see on spot all of these properties or 90% of what's available. So if aggregation is now taken over by agentic AI, so yeah, ChatGPT will go or Manus will go and find properties wherever they are with those particular attributes, then your portal search is starting to become a little bit, why would I just use these, really restrictive filters when I can go and ask about ballroom dancing, etc. So yeah, so really, I think that's going to be really interesting. And I think to your point about, and go back to the sort of general portals, you're talking about Zoopla's kind of software. And again, this is going to become, I think, a really interesting part of AI is it's just data, right? So actually the UI on these portal or on these CRM front ends, if it's not humans in a couple of years' time actually clicking the buttons, it's just going to be AI and it's going to be Manus or it's going to be somebody else. Then actually, what does that mean for the market? And you know, obviously, Alto is one that's with Zoopla, but there's plenty of others, right?
But there's one this morning I was listening to. It's called Ace from General AI, and they've released it where it'll literally click on your screen and you can watch the cursor being moved around by the generative AI, agent AI, doing what you would do, but it's doing in milliseconds rather than the seconds that we would take. So
Yeah.
watching these agents spin off is incredible to watch.
Yeah, I think it's going to have a huge impact. And I think as well that there was a good story today as we move on to a different one about Rentman software. And again, this is right in your sweet spot coming from your background. That essentially there was a big spat last week, it seems, where whoever had the license in the UK fell out with whoever was the global license holder. And now a bunch of estate agents systems have just stopped working.
Yeah, and I thought it was really nice of a certain CRMs to step in and offer to save them and to move them over as well. So that was a couple
Yeah,
of
that's
articles
great.
this morning on that front, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, Heather and Tom
great.
stepping into the breach. But I was thinking about it. I don't actually know many agencies that are on Rentman, but I do know from experience how horrendous it is when you come in the morning and everything's off, be it from my old days at Foxtons when we had an upgrade on our old property management CRM and it took us down for 5 days, which is very difficult to work right the way through to when we were at Repeat trying to migrate people over and the previous CRM just turned off so that we couldn't get the data to convert over and suddenly you're having to pay for a new license just to keep ticking on. So hopefully those Rentman clients get over to Street or whoever the CRM may be.
Yeah, that's nothing that Reaper would ever do. No.
I think they could help as well, I'm sure. Give them a call. There's other good, what's the term? There's other good
Yeah,
bookshops out there you can go to as well.
are available. Other
Yeah,
great
that's it.
are available. Yes, absolutely. But bravo to Street for getting in there really quick and actually making a splash in their PR.
Great PR, yeah.
Very smart. Okay, so just one more story then for this week's property news. Centers around an agent over in Norfolk, Sue Hall from Arnold
That's
Keys.
your neck of the woods, isn't it?
It's not many miles away from here, actually. Yeah, so I'm Cambridge. So yeah, I can go over and help with the AI challenge that Sue has identified, which is, and it's a valid one, right? Perhaps it's over exaggerated a little bit, and sometimes journalist headlines are. But it says agent slams competitors who use AI to write property descriptions. Now, it is very much the case that people writing the AI writing property descriptions can be really rubbish because if you just put it into ChatGPT and ask for a property description, it's going to write it in Americanese and it's going to say serene escape, guaranteed. I tell you, it's going to say that. It's going to basically go through all of those different, very Americanized kind of words, but you can train this out, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. In the same way that I asked my LLM something last night and it came back and said, I'm going to use the term game changer here because I've previously told it not to use game changer and other things. I've been through the whole prop tech bingo saying do not use that term. And
Yeah,
also reach out's been banned, a whole host of things. You can program them. And if it's coming back with Z's in it and Americanization, you're just taking out the box.
yeah,
But right, well done to it, because I do think when it's clearly been written, for me, the point of generative AI is it's a great first draft and you
yeah,
can then go on and build from there.
yeah. It solves the blank sheet of paper problem, right? Where you're just
Yeah.
sitting there going, where the hell do I start?
And it's
Yeah,
not just text anymore, is it? And I know I'm a spoiler for later, but it's not just text first draft anymore.
100%. There's so much good stuff going on that we're going to get onto. But yeah, just to round this out, I think we should. So we have a red list. So look, yeah, guys, we do these AI property descriptions, but the zero model prop. But what we do is we train it on the agent's previous property descriptions, so it writes like that. And it's literally that kind of straightforward. So you just train on 30 to 50 previous property descriptions that they love, and then it will just write like that. You insist that only writes in UK English, and like you said, we always have a red list of words agents hate and every individual agent has its own list of red words. I'd love to see your red words for your own production because I compare it with mine because I'm sure there'll be some good similarities. But yes, it's not difficult. But so yeah, in this case, I would argue it's not necessarily the AI that's messing up and that's wrong. Sadly, it's probably the humans using it badly, which I don't think it was the last time.
No, I think that'll be a recurring theme. But in the case of all technologies, isn't it? When it's not working, it tends to be the humans.
Yes, we can come from the technology side to say, yeah, absolutely. And it is generally true. But anyway, what we are going to move on to now, just because we really want to get stuck into some of the amazing tech that's out there, we're going to talk about our AI and technology news this week. All right, first up, we need to just flag that the Gemini 2.5, so Google's latest large language model is here. It's what they're calling a next gen version with reasoning capabilities, so hybrid. And yeah, it's amazing. Apparently it absolutely smashes some of the benchmarks and is currently sitting pretty above the likes of Claude 3.7, Sonnet, and OpenAI's ChatGPT latest versions. So yeah, I'll be honest with you, it came out last week. I haven't dived into it with any great
Well,
detail.
so for me, one of the best things that it's done is it's folded in the audio overviews from Notebook LM, which for anyone who's not used Notebook LM previously, it's very much a research and scholarly product, wasn't it? But the standout, and I think you might have introduced me to it first, Mal, last year when you were speaking at the event in Barcelona, because that's makes it sound like right. I can't think of the
This is
word that's
what we
safe to
do,
use
right?
on podcasts. Yeah, just
Just
Barcelona,
like,
chatting about this stuff. Anyway, I'm sure there's plenty of swear words you can use in there. I let people listen do that. But Notebook LM was fantastic, and there's a number of people I work with and speak to, including my wife, who now uses it for their own research, and especially the audio overview that basically lets you create a podcast of the content. And with things like the Renters' Rights Bill coming up and a lot of very dense content to digest, that's completely. Gemini's now got that wrapped up. And interestingly, I heard this morning that the person who was overseeing all of Notebook LM has now been moved in to run Gemini as a project. So that's been
yeah.
Google obviously really seeing what Notebook's done and shifting that focus from Notebook into Gemini, but with the team from Notebook running Gemini basically.
Brilliant. Yeah, and it was such a great product, wasn't it? It was like just it landed and it just blew everybody's minds, particularly the natural conversation of the kind of podcast hosts. But yeah, absolutely. I can see why they would want to privilege that particular person, move them into productizing some of the other stuff. No, that's good. Again, it's always good. So my advice and I think yours as well is what you want to do is have kind of two or three of these kind of frontier models almost on going at the same time. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they're $20 each and stuff like that per month. But actually, and then if you give them the same prompt or give them the same kind of instructions, and then see which ones you prefer, and actually which ones gives you the best one. And sometimes you can even say, I got this from another large language model. Can you rewrite it and so on? And it can just then you can really fine tune stuff and get it almost adversarially battling it out for who's the best and which one do you actually prefer.
It's great for validating content as well, isn't it? And I know we wouldn't necessarily touch on hallucinations, but if you're building content and you think you want to check the authenticity of it, running it from one LLM through another one really helps.
receipts. All right, so you can actually create a really compelling receipt, even with tea stains on it, that basically you can then, people, I'm not suggesting anybody does this, right? Don't do this, kids, that you can actually then go and submit as being a legitimate receipt for some expenditure. And that's already happening literally within days of its launch.
Wow. Yeah, incredible.
That human ingenuity.